This is my tutorial on how to make a Gothic breastplate for beginners. I'm intending this for cosplayers and LARPers and reenactors, not brute and like hardcore steel on steel combat, because I don't feel qualified to be making a tutorial on making armor for something that extreme. But you know, for LARPers and stuff, it should be fine. In fact, it should be more than fine. The reason why I'm doing this is because I'm just sick of seeing people who want to get into armor making and then for LARP and stuff, and then they go and make hideous leather abominations. That's heresy. So I figured I would make a easy tutorial on how you can make a steel breastplate that is relatively historically accurate. Alright, so now one of the main issues that a lot of beginners face when they're trying to make a breastplate is a lack of depth. Basically, there's a cavity in here that, honestly, I could put a large egg in here and still have room left over. Or a ping pong ball or whatever. Basically, it creates an air cap. So force connecting with your breastplate doesn't transfer directly into your sternum. If you're playing LARP and that becomes an issue, you're maybe playing a bit hard. I'm not intending this to be hit with, I was going to say lances and stuff, but to be honest, this one's being sent away for weapons testing, so probably going to be used to test that you can't cut through a breastplate with a katana, no matter how many times you fold the thing. Yeah, so, you know, cope and see, weebs. Basically, there's a certain degree of shape involved to get the aesthetic of a breastplate, and there's some function involved, but, you know, a lot of people who want to make a breastplate, this ends up being way too flat. So, I looked through a bunch of archives of breastplates, looking for something that would be the easiest possible thing to make, and this is what I was looking for. This is made of 4 segments, so I was able to factor into the templates most of the curvature. This is almost entirely done. Yeah, the curvature of these plates is done with light dishing with a plastic hammer into, I used a steel dishing die, but you can use a wooden stump. Basically, with basic tools, anyone should be able to make this as long as you're not a crayon munching moron. And with that in mind, my philosophy for this filming was to give you a minimum of instructions, enough that you should be able to more than easily complete the project without, you know, you don't need to see me doing every single hammer mark and tell you how to do every single little thing, hopefully. That said, I would really appreciate, if you're going to build one of these, if you could film yourself. That way, if there's anything that people are getting wrong that I didn't realize people needed a few tips with, I can help you out. If you need a bit of help with this, contact me on Iron Adrian Watson on Instagram. I'm more than happy to help anyone who wants to get into armoring, or, you know, if you just want to come and have a chat about the project. And I would love to see it if you were to tag me in some photos of the stuff you're producing. But enough of that, let's get on to it. Now, when you get the templates, you're going to need to make it in cardboard and fit it to yourself. Personally, I like little paper fasteners to put them in where the rivets should be. But some things you need to look out for is the bit where it comes in and is narrow. You really want to start with the top first. The narrow point up the waist is at the natural waist between the hips and the ribs. So it's like just a bit underneath the ribs, because that's where your body actually articulates. If you put it down near where a modern shirt ends, or you put it on the waist where your jeans sit, like where your belt normally is on a pair of jeans, that's not going to be comfortable. It's going to look hideous. It's just wrong, to be honest. I mean, maybe if you're doing like ancient Greek or something, there are a few, but you know, we're not talking Gothic breastplate. For a medieval European breastplate, they cinch in at the natural waist. This way, as you can see with this, we pop a belt on it. It puts the weight of the breastplate on the hips. I can take these straps off. Hell, I'll do it. The weight of it is supported on the hips. See? All the weight is on the waist. Yeah, the weight of your breastplate should be supported on your hips, not your shoulders. That's an important functional feature. Having it articulate or cinch in, holding it at your natural waist, stops it moving down past your hips. It stops it moving up and down because it's cinched in at your narrowest point, or it should be your narrowest point. If not, maybe go on a diet and get into a healthy body shape. I mean, granted, even Henry VIII cinched in at the waist, because to be honest, this forms almost like a steel corset for men, manly men, and corset for manly men. Yeah, it stops it sliding down past your hips, keeps it locked in place, and it also puts the weight of your armour onto your hips like a good hiking backpack. It's not on your shoulders, so when you're fighting and stuff and swinging stuff, when you go to move your arms around, you're not lifting your breastplate and armour every time you've got to like swing something at someone, which so that's a functional consideration, having it cinch in there, and that will massively improve your functionality. So if you're going to be fighting up and stuff like that in this, you're going to want to have it cinching at your natural waist. It's functional. You know what? If you don't want to make functional, you do you. But yeah, you want to cinch it. So that's where you want this to be. Now, of course, on the template, there's an extra about an inch at the bottom. Factor that in. Once you've got that, then do your templates for the fold. That's this thing here, the little skirt. Make your top half, then make your fold to fit once you've flared out the sides. The other thing you need to really pay attention on is the that kind of diameter. Hey, where's that kicking into me now? Honestly, is the other thing you need to look out for is the distance across your chest. I probably should have made this a little bit narrower. Not a huge fan of, it's coming out a bit there. I should have evened it out a bit, maybe have this line continuing up to here and bring it over. But you want to make sure that you can essentially go like that and not have your arms touching the breastplate. Peeking in a little there. A little uncomfortable here. I always struggle with this area, but you want to make sure that if you cross your arms like that, there's still a gap, because if it's way too wide, you're going to struggle to swing stuff. Granted, I can't really reach over without twisting at the waist, but if I'm using if I'm actually swinging using good technique, it's not going to be an issue. So yeah, we'll make sure it's not too wide across there and it comes down to your natural waist. Here is on this one it's in line with the collarbone, so like there, like your bony bits of your collarbone. My collarbone's there. I put this just a little bit lower. Basically I just didn't want anything hard and metal contacting my collarbone. And yeah, that's what you need to focus on when you're doing up your cardboard template before you start cutting them out. Alright, I've traced out my templates on the steel and cut it out, and filed off all the edges to make them nice and round. I'm operating on the opinion that if you need to actually have that shown to you how to do that, then you shouldn't be trusted with power tools. But I also realise that probably a few of you have not used power tools before, so just a little advice: respirator when you're grinding, eye protection, just in general eye protection. Don't hold on to stuff while you're cutting it. I like to use these kind of like D-clamps for holding onto a sawhorse or a bench. Use lubricants while cutting to save your machinery and blades from getting dulled. And when you're using a jigsaw, especially with this kind of detail stuff, you want wraparound eye protection, because it will throw little bits of steel that will find their way around normal safety glasses. So you want full like safety goggles. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you need more information on how to trace and cut out templates than that, then maybe go draw something with crayons instead. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically just dish all of those in basically a dishing jig. You can use a stump. I use that. It's just the same but in steel, so it gives you a bit more return. And I'm going to be using a plastic panel beating hammer at first to see if I can get enough curvature that way. The plastic panel beating hammer, that thing, because it's not steel, it doesn't mark or dent the steel quite as bad, so you've got less planishing or grinding to make it all shiny when you're done. Considering how much of the curvature of this breastplate is factored into the templates, I'm hoping to be able to get away with it just using a plastic hammer. For deeper dishing you would need to use a dishing or ball peen hammer. And just a tip, when you're working steel cold like this, you get a lot of return from your hammering, the vibrations that jolt back up your hand. Do not hold your hammer with your thumb on the back. Do not grip it tightly. You want it to just be moving pretty loosely in your hand. You're not gripping it, you're kind of just throwing it, not quite throwing it, but yeah, it's not a you kind of just want to let the hammer do the work, and you don't want to drive through with it, and you don't want to be gripping it tight. You don't want lots of tension in your hand or in your arm, because you basically then have tendons and ligaments that are under tension that are then getting jolted, and that's very bad, and you get all kinds of like arthritis-y stuff going on. Well, also, these are great for when you need to actually hold on to the steel. Instead of holding onto it with your hand, I tighten that up and I hold onto it with this. That way I can keep a loose grip on it. It's a lot of times I'll just like make a circle with my hand, and yeah, I'm not gripping this, because the same thing happens. You tendons and ligaments under tension getting jolted, it's not good for them. So basically I keep my grip on that very loose, and yeah, I need to tighten that up, but you get the idea. So I'm going to start dishing this out and dishing the rest out, and then we'll see what we're up to. We can work on getting them to all match each other. Alright, now that I've gotten it dished and roughed in, I've attached screws to hold it in place just to just make sure it's all roughed in. But before I give it the final finish and like make sure all of the different parts all line up perfectly without gaps, I'm going to put in a central ridge, or really more of just a central really light flute. Fluting is the creases and stuff you see on like Gothic armour. Okay, so there are several ways that you can put in a crease or a flute that involve stakes, like actual specific tooling for the job. That would be better, but I'm trying to do this as minimalist as possible, trying to get away with extremely basic tools. So I'm not going to be using specialty tools like special blacksmithing and armoring jigs and dies, and we're going to be using a very rounded, very blunt cold chisel and piece of wood with a groove cut into it, and something that we can use as an anvil. Technically this is an inferior way of doing this because we are using a chisel up the back of it, so it will be thinning the material very slightly. Definitely would not want to do this on a piece of steel with a cutout, because that would thin the material even more. You can kind of get away with using a bit of wood a bit easier. This will put scratches and cuts into the back of the breastplate, theoretically, well not theoretically, but slightly thinning material at that point. But this is not for steel armored combat, this is not for Brewhurt or HEMA or anything severe like that. This is a tutorial for like LARP and cosplay, so it should be okay, although I am planning on sending this one off to be destruction tested, so it will be interesting to see if the chiseled central flute will be a failure point. I'm not really sure what they're planning on doing to destroy it, but alright, let's go. Alright, now I'm just going to do this one just so you can see the process that I'm using, put in this central crease slash very light flute. Basically I chiseled into this piece of wood with my rounded off cold chisel, taken the edges off, the corners, rounded it, because we really don't want this cutting into the steel, we just want it kind of deforming it. But it will end up cutting the steel just a little bit, as well as compressing it and moving it out of the way. So take a decent sized hammer. We're not going too crazy hard on it. We're going to do several passes, do lots of them, going over it just to even out inaccuracies. So, ooh, ow! Forgot my ear protection. Yeah, definitely want to be wearing some kind of hearing protection when you do this. We just walk it up, making sure there's overlap. now we've started to get a little bit of a crease forming. Actually, might just do a few more passes, making sure that's nice and even. Yeah, that's actually come out pretty good. So next I got my nice little anvil. You can use anything hard and flat. It's nice and polished. Just gonna be a small hammer. Just want to like sort of flatten out the sides of it, just to help enhance the crease of it. I'll just get in with this panel beating hammer as well. There we go, nice central crease. And so yeah, I would call that a crease. Honestly, it's almost like a fraction of a millimeter proud, just because it's been pushed into that groove a little. Maybe not enough to call it a flute. I would call it a crease. If it was a little bit more proud, I'd call it a flute, or if I hammered on that side to push it down. But yeah, I'd say that's a nice central crease. And I'll do that to the rest of them, and then we'll look at getting all the pieces married up to each other, well, and fitted. Alright, so in the process of fitting all of these together with screws, I reckon that hole is off about 1 millimeter away from where I want it to be. So the way you can actually migrate a rivet hole is, well, I want it to go that way about 1 millimeter. So I get my anvil and a ball peen hammer. Now I'm doing this on the under side, so this will be hidden underneath of the higher plate. So what I want to basically do is take a ball peen and kind of just squish the side away from the direction I want to go. So so now you can see the hole is more of a semicircle. I'm working on my armour, baby. Yep, I'm filming. Come on, baby. Where'd you go? I love you, baby. Oh, I love you too. We've got to get back to work. Come on. Come on, baby. Oh, I love you too. Okay, big hug. Now that I've made it into a semicircle, because I'm only moving a tiny little bit that way, if you want to move it further you can squish it out completely, or if you hammer it enough all the way around you can actually close the entire hole up and put a new hole in. But because I just wanted to move it over a bit, I just hammer into a semicircle, and now I re-drill that hole, and now the hole should be moved over about 1 millimeter, and that's how you can migrate holes that you've drilled into steel. It's a lot harder on thinner stuff. It's one of the advantages to working in 16 gauge is you get a little bit more flexibility and leeway, but because that's beneath, yeah, there'll be any deformation of that can be taken out with polishing, but it's also going to be hidden underneath of the other lane, so gotta do it the other one too. Alright, now that I've gotten the plates fitted to each other, and I've got screws in just holding them in place, and just making sure they all fit together. Got a nice bit of curvature to it. There's some historical inaccuracies in that curve, but you know, it for a historical piece it would be curved more at the bottom and less at the top, but you know, we've got depth to it. That's what I was really going for. So now it's time to start rolling edges. I need to roll this edge along the neck, and roll these edges here. I just mark it out on both sides. It's a little bit over quarter of an inch. Just go with what looks good in terms of thickness, but I'll show you how I roll one of these edges. I decided to go with articulated sliding arm cutouts, just because I thought that might be a bit easier than doing it all in one big piece. Alternatively, if you made this wider, you could just roll that and not have to mess around with the articulations. They'll be coming later, but I figured if I make these separate pieces and you mess them up, you won't be damaging or having to restart your breastplate, the main body of it. You'll just have to start one of them again, which would be a lot easier. Alright, so here I have this little hobby anvil. Some people would call it a anvil shaped object. Don't really need to nitpick too much on this. This is a little craft anvil. I'm pretty sure it's just cast mold steel. I'm using this just to show that you don't need a big fancy anvil to do this kind of work. There's some slight advantages to these soft little anvils, as I'm pretty sure it's just cast mold steel, so it polishes easier. So what I've done to modify this anvil, and you could just use a big lump of steel, is I've basically rounded that edge so that it's smooth as opposed to the sharp corner it comes with. And again, is not necessary. You know, you want to be messing with the corner of a big expensive anvil if you don't have to, unless it's going to be a regular thing for you. Basically, I polish this up so that as I roll it, it doesn't scratch up or scrape up the inside of this, just so I don't have less to deal with afterwards. So there's two ways I can do this. I can either have the piece on here and hammer it that way, or have it on that side and hammer it that way. But I'm going to go with keeping the actual bulk of the material on the anvil so it doesn't deform as I'm working it, and only that bit deforms. So, right. All I've got here is a small panel beating hammer, and I've rounded the end of it. They don't come like this. Took a while and rounded it pretty thoroughly. You could just maybe flatten out the head of a ball peen, a small ball peen. I've also done that, but basically you want a small hammer that hasn't got corners on it, because those corners will dig into the material, so you want them to take it off, and you want it rounded, because even if it's just an angle change or a crease on the edge of the hammer, which this kind of does have, they're pretty well smoothed out. They'll get transferred to the metal as you're working it. So what we want to do is we're going to not roll it all in one go, and just get it started. We'll just trace out a little line there, and what we're going to do is just work our way up the piece. And the kind of glancing blows going a bit like that. And what we're going to do is the first pass, we're just going to get it started, and then on the next pass we'll start bending it a bit further. But we just want to keep that flat and just start getting that crease going. Alright, so I've gone a few degrees all the way around. As it starts to get a little bit wobbly, I'll put it on the edge and tap it down, hammer it down just to get it all even. And I'm just going to do a few more passes. It's starting to form. I'll just, like, it doesn't quite fit the piece anymore, but just keep stretching it out because it's quite a small piece. But yeah, you will get warpage doing this, which is another reason why I decided to do the cutout separately. But yeah, just gotta do a few more passes until I can get it to approximately 90 degrees. Alright, so I've practically gotten that to 90 degrees. It sort of still fits the breastplate. It sort of still fits the breastplate. I just keep stretching it. But yeah, now that it's at 90 degrees, or at least close, very close to it, kind of maxed out what we can do with that edge. So what we're going to do is, look, you can use the face of the anvil, but this one has a horn, so what I'm going to basically do is hold in the horn, and it's going to strike the edge just to tap that down. Because it's already got that bend in it, it'll bend at that point, and yeah, we're just going to work our way along it, little by little, bending a bit more each time, and slowly start to get that 90 degrees to start to just fold down. Really good armourers can make a D shape, or some even do like a triangle, all kinds of fancy stuff. Really, we're just going to try and just get that to slowly just bend down to make more like a teardrop shape. If it gets really jagged, you can go over it with a file just to keep it even, just lightly filing the edge, so it's not too much. And of course, I've been going over it on the edge just so it's not all wavy. Yep. But yeah, because we've polished and smoothed out that edge, and see a few dents in it, but yeah, because it was all polished out, it's not cutting into it, though not really an issue as much, because yeah, that's going to be on the inside. Alright. Alright, so I've gone to the point where it's basically a 45-degree angle. Had to put my little hobby anvil up a bit higher so I can reach it. Now we're just going to be like hammering that edge just to get it to bend down. I'll just show you a bit of that real quick. And we'll just keep working it all the way around. The horn of an anvil is really good for this, just because, you know, it's a curve. If you're doing it on there, it's a bit you can get little panel beaters, pucks, but you know, they just don't anchor down, so they're a real pain to work with. Yeah, just going to keep doing a few more passes until we bring that all the way down and touching. So we don't want it to be like folded over flat. But we just want to bring that tip just so it curves around just to touch the bottom. And there it is. That's the kind of shape we're going for. So I'm going to have to file that back because it's, you know, because we curved the point. File that down, probably curve it a little bit so that, you know, probably file it so it's like that. Yeah, probably round that edge just a bit. But yeah, and I've been, yeah, alright, so there we go. That's the kind of cross section we're looking for. You know, not folded over like a piece of paper, but curled. Gonna take it off with a file. There's a little bit sticking up, and probably round it a bit, just so that we've got you know, don't have anything too pokey coming at us. And yeah, it helps if you work it down slowly. Just go over it slowly. You kind of jam a thumbnail underneath of that. That's not going to be an issue. If anything, it just means any blades that were coming up would get caught on it. Now if you want to be fancy, you can sand or file that back, get it all nice, or even do some roping, little chisel work on it. But considering this has been sent away for a destruction test, that's overkill. But yeah, it still fits onto the breastplate. And, yeah, I'm going to have that bottom roll be pretty much just above there, and when there's a sliding rivet and you reach forwards, it'll slide in on sliding rivets. Took a pen, because this is nicely smoothed out and rounded. Mark about 10 mil, and basically, yeah, I'm only going to let it come out as far as that 10 mil can be visible. Well, just so that we've always got at least 10 mil of overlap. I'll be working out how much of a sliding rivet slot we'll have in it on that piece held in place, and yeah, it's gonna be good. Gonna do the other bit, and doing this is gonna be tricky. Probably need to flatten that center crease out first before I roll it, but here's the same method to roll that. It's gonna be like, yeah, that kind of there. Yeah, gonna roll that down too, just so you've got a rolled edge where your neck is. Oh well, it's probably gonna just get wrecked with a vector claw bar or something. Definitely not gonna get wrecked by a katana, I can tell you that much. I don't care how many times you fold it. Alright. Alright, so I've skipped ahead a few steps, just because it's easier to show you stuff when it's already done. Start with, yeah, rolled that. But yeah, okay. I'm going to have rivets in this with a 5mm shaft, so when the rivets are actually in there, that little hole will not be visible. These screws are thinner than that, obviously. But I've attached these on sliding rivets, which basically all I do is I drill 2 holes, and then with a file you connect them up and make the edges smooth, and yeah, creates this slot that a rivet can slide on, which just gives you a little bit more mobility. If you don't want to do that, you can just just roll that edge out a little bit more and then roll it over. Depending on how I'm wearing it, this can, and depending on what angle, a little bit unhappy with this point up here. If I wear the breastplate up nice and high and in a good position, it's not an issue, but yeah, one thing to look out for is this piece here. I've rounded it, but yeah, overall it could probably do with being a little bit more rounded, but you're going to need to figure that out. Make sure it's not digging into you. But this one's going away to get smashed a bit, so not the end of the world. And then it's a simple matter of adding, well, I think the original had hinges on pieces of steel that would basically be a similar shape to these bits of leather, but I just figured it would be a bit easier to use a little bit of leather than have an extra piece of steel there, so it can't dig into me. Feel a little bit more comfortable. So yeah, not happy with these hinges. They're a little small, a little fragile. Yeah, I just went out and bought some. You can mess around with making your own, wait, not hinges, buckles. Yeah, you can mess around with making your own buckles. I probably should have bought some more heavy duty ones. Now, next thing I need to do with this is about 3/4 of an inch or an inch of this bottom needs to be flared out. Basically the same way we rolled those edges, except I'm going to stop it once it's flared. I'm not going to roll it all the way over. And that is so that I can attach a fold to it. If you're not doing a fold, you would just, to be honest, you really do want that kick out, that flare, because that's where the belt holding it to you is going to sit. I've done my flare at the bottom. It's about an inch of flare. Just need to touch up those ends, so they'll be trimmed back anyway, because there's a lot of extra material at, you know, out here. There's a lot of extra material that need to be trimmed back, but yeah, it's got a really nice flare, and oh, it is so much more comfortable putting it on now. That flag means those little points don't dig into you, but also it's just enough that it sits into your natural waist, and it just feels so comfortable, and just kind of, it's like it's just molded to my body like a second skin made of steel, of just a solid shell that feels like it's meant to be part of me. Oh, it's such a good feeling. But yeah, all I did is a slight change was I took my little hobby anvil with the radius side. I mostly worn off, but took some pen, marked lines on the inside just to keep it even, you know, every 1/3 of an inch, and instead of using the small hammer, I flared it out with my plastic panel beating hammer, and oh, it was so good. Because it's got that extra weight, it can deform a lot more material, so I was able to do it in a lot fewer passes, but also because it's plastic. Right, so this is basically a polished surface with a polished and smooth radius. Because I was using plastic hammer, there's basically no metal deformation you get when using steel hammers. Like if I'd used a steel hammer, it would have squished the material, deformed it, whereas when you're using a plastic hammer, it kind of just, because there's just that tiny little bit of give in the hammer, it kind of just like moves the steel without like squishing it as much as the impact from an actual steel hammer would. And so basically I was able to make that turn with very few little creases and crimps. Yeah, but if you wanted that nice and polished up, that's a lot less you need to polish out. And so it's, yeah, I love my plastic hammers for light work on mild steel because it doesn't scratch up the metal. Yeah. So yeah, if you wanted to only go to this point and not add a fold, that would be understandable for whatever costume you're doing. But now we're going to look at adding a fold, and yeah, it gives it a nice crease for a belt to go on, so the belt holds the bottom half, and then I've taken those bits up there off. Yeah, those straps go down, touch the belt, and yeah. Alright, cool. Alright, so I've skipped ahead a bit, and I've added these lower articulating lames. Yeah, they gap a little at the back, but one of the next things I'm going to do is find the vertical line and trim all that off and rivet it. But yeah, it's pretty simple. I know in one of the examples I showed there was a bottom one with a little cutout. Yeah, this is going away to be smashed to pieces, so I don't think it needs that, and yeah, it's basically done. It's very simple. Now, because these bottom lanes are all identical and they overlap downwards, it creates this kind of like stepped effect with the little flares. If you don't want that stepped effect, what you can do is you can leave excess for that whole area, and then once you've riveted them in, figure out where you want to cut out for the flare. Same if you want to go the opposite direction, which is what I would do if I wanted to add fancy extra little peaks or other embellishments along the edges of the breastplate. I would leave it a little bit extra, and then once they're all put together where I want them on there, if I wanted them to all be in line, and then I can, like, you know, put a say if I wanted to put a peak there, there and there, and have them all line up, so I can put a flute coming from the middle going out and have it all be lined up. I'd leave a section proud, sticking out a bit, and then once it's stuck together, work out what I need to cut away to have them all line up perfectly. Yeah, that's basically it at this point. I'm just gonna rivet it together and replace these buckles. I'm not happy with them, and trim off the excess to the sides, and that's it done. Okay, so what I did to make the rivets is I got some decking nails, because they've got this kind of domed head that I want on my rivets, and because they're galvanized, I just leave them in double strength vinegar overnight, and that takes the galv off, but once you take it out they will rust. So took it out, washed them off, gave them a little touch up with the Scotch Brite pad, and just left them in olive oil to protect them from oxidization. So yeah, so I gotta shorten them down to make them the right length, but yeah, that's how you make that's one way to make rivets if you don't want to order in proper rivets. Alright, just a quick little video on how I do my riveting. Essentially, you get your nail end or rivet, and you pop it through. Then I mark off a little bit extra, because I'm not hammering all of that down. What I've been doing is just using this, and just to squeeze it to leave a little mark, and then actually using bolt cutters, because yeah, trying to cut through nails this thick with this thing would be a nightmare. Pop them out, come off, you got that. Then you want ear protection for this, but grab yourself a ball peen, and you want to kind of like aim mostly around the outside of the rivet to just try and get it to mushroom out, but yeah, just hammer that whole thing until it mushrooms over. Yeah, you want to make sure you don't just pound the metal, making it kind of like become a cone, but roll the edges as well. Another reason why you want to make sure that you hammer the edge of the rivet is so that it doesn't basically create a sharp bit on the inside of your armour, so you mushroom it over so it's relatively rounded. But you know, you're going to have clothing on underneath this anyway, but it helps it not get caught on stuff or scratch you. And yeah, here's your rivet. Alright, so I should probably explain the slight difference on how you put in a sliding rivet. It's we've got this one that's still too long. Basically, you've got to pop a washer on it. I know that seems pretty obvious, but I feel like if I didn't tell you that it needs a washer, someone wouldn't realise. Yeah, just as otherwise it would be trying to mushroom it over that, which would be kind of ridiculous. Yeah, so I just popped out a little homemade washer. So luckily I've got a steel guillotine so I can cut the edges and file them off. You can cut it however you want, really. Basically I did that because I cannot buy rivets with a 5mm hole, and I want it relatively close to the shaft that I'm using. The shaft, they said they were 4.5, but they're actually 5.0. But you know, and yeah, you probably want to do both sliding rivets. Do hammer that one down and mushroom it onto the rivet just enough so that it won't come out. Then pop the other one in before starting to tighten them up, because you don't really want them tight. You want them to be quite loose so that it can actually slide it back and forth. So you might want to leave a little bit extra material on the shaft when you nip it off. Probably not much. Anything over an extra mil probably be overkill. Alright, so there it is. I've replaced the buckles with some off of some dog collars, and I've made this setup with, I just got some really cheap thin belts. They're like $3 each. They're not real leather, but like, does that even matter? They just loop over, stitch together, attaches to a belt, and yeah, the way these were held on, now really, they should have a back plate, but you know, wearing just a breastplate, the thing too, might not be historical for this particular pattern, blah 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 blah. You know, this is a pretty basic and historically accurate way of wearing a Gothic breastplate. Seems a bit weird to me, but they did it. Honestly, I'd probably reinforce this with a bunch of steel scales. If you're doing LARP and fantasy, maybe that's an upgrade you could do. But you know what? If you've completed this, you should have all the skills and knowledge to get pretty crazy. And there it is. Finished result. Oh, now I could polish this up and have it all shiny. I could paint it and have it as painted armour. I could polish it up and hot glue it and make it shiny like a peacock. But you know, this one's going away to get smashed up, and I kind of like the scale on the top, the kind of like the black oxide layer from it being hot rolled. So all I did was I took some black boot polish and basically just buff it up with black boot polish. It'll leave a layer of wax and carbon on it. The wax will help protect it from rust. You can paint the inside, that's a pretty common thing. But if you're going to polish this up, and to be honest, even with this, it is mild steel, it's not stainless, it will rust on you. So you want to coat it with at least oil. I typically use vegetable oil, I do alright with that, but I also prefer waxes. I'm using black boot polish on this one. Some of my other armours I use just clear floor wax, because it was cheap. But yeah, wax coating helps stop water getting to the steel. But yeah, if you want to keep it dry, and yeah. Now you have to deal with all the fun of steel armor maintenance, but you know what? You signed up for it. Alright. See you.